Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'm currently still setting up because we had so many people today, so bear with me as I'm doing that. As well. Oh, hello. Hopefully, the stream is gonna be a little bit less choppy than last time. With the Team Challenges stream, oh my god, we had like a bunch of issues, and we had to completely drop like the Twitch stream, so I think that it should be fixed now, but please let me know if anything is acting up. Hey Bodhi, hey Kat, hey Joe, hey David. How's everybody doing? Just organizing pictures over here. Hello Lilian. So far so good. Oh, you're dreading the feedback? Kind of sounded like it. Oh, Liz! Oh my god, seeing your face in the chat reminds me that I also need to grab your image too. Let me make sure that we do that before I forget. I was actually doing that, but then I had to start the stream, so thank you for a visual reminder. Let me get you set up for that as well. Okay. Cool. Okay, let's do this. Let's get your images in there too. Right. Might as well be looking at something, right? So let's switch it over. Oh my god, it's a bunny head. So as you can see, I'm still preparing. I meant mostly that the stream is looking good so far. Oh, okay. Thanks, David. Hey, Shubhranshu! How are you doing? I'm just getting the stream set up. Like, usually it takes me like half an hour, but we got so many people today that running a little bit late. So you can watch me prep with Wednesday. Is that like the birth of like a new genre, like preparation streams? But yeah, last couple of days have been really good on my side too. Like we're, as you, I don't think you can tell. Like we've been doing a massive amount of cleanup because it's getting closer and closer to our move to the UK. So still a couple of weeks out, but I'd rather be like really prepared. So we've kind of been like packing a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, just preparing for the move, trying to get everything organized. And cleaning up the flat as well is a huge part of it. I even got like a couple of blisters on my hands too. They're like mostly gone right now. You can kind of see like the remnants still. Yeah. Trying to get like the wall sorted out was like a right pain. Oh, I'm gonna give everyone like a recommendation. Well, anti-recommendation, I guess. You know those like really thick strips of like adhesive that are basically like meant to attach something to a wall or something like that? Please don't buy those. Oh my god. I kid you not, we had to spend like 2 days just getting everything off the wall. It was ridiculous. Wait, let's actually do it the opposite way around. Yeah, please don't do that to yourself. Behind my desk, I had like a whole bunch of sound panels. And each individual sound panel had like a section of one of like an adhesive section to it. So I had to scratch off like, I don't know, close to 100 of those suckers to just like free up the wall again. Let's see, so I think we haven't got everyone. We got more here, right? Yeah. Got Sunny. Oh, I haven't even added like Sunny stuff. So let's add Sunny, and Will is all set up. Pyro set up. Sunny. So this. And Sami's as well. That's a rip for your walls, literally. Oh yeah. God. Yeah, I spent just 2 days. It's like heating it up with like a hairdryer and then scratching off like the main residue, and then with like a special product, we got rid of like the rest of the gunk that was still on the walls. But it ripped off like a huge part of like the paint too. So we had to fill those holes up and then paint them again. We still need to do the painting, but ugh. But hey, I guess it's a part of being an adult, right? How's everyone else week been? Hope y'all had a good one. Let's do something like this. Cool. I think we got everyone set up now. Just quickly browsing through all of it. Pyro, Sami, Sunny. We have like 2 wheels? Am I going crazy? Alright. Okay. We should be good. Let's move this one up then. What a lovely medieval house. Oh god. Don't you get started. That medieval house will haunt me forever, I think. Still on the hunt, the job hunt life, but I hope with this piece I worked on for the last 2 weeks it will give me a good boost. Yeah, I hope so too, buddy. Hope so too. Alright, we got a whole bunch of people to go through today, so let me prepare for that properly. Alright. For people that are new, give you like a little introduction here. So this is WIP Wednesday, what I call like my weekly feedback event. These are all like works from the community that we're going to be looking at today. People can always tag their work as like WIP Wednesday. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at it every Wednesday, and then I'll just give a little bit of feedback, right? Just to help you along your journey. What you can see here are all community submissions. And if you want to take part in those, like you can sign up in the description below, which you can now enjoy with our new user account system, which I'm pretty excited about. Like, got like a whole bunch of goodies on there now too, so that's awesome. But yeah, let's dive into things. Let me grab Discord as well. I need a little bit of additional context. So, where are we going to start? We are going to start with Cat. No, Cat. I didn't add you. See, I knew that I was forgetting someone. Dang it. Dang it, dang it. Did I get your images already? I think I did. still me. Okay. Let me add you to the list. Got this file. Okay, we're quickly get all your stuff in as well. Okay. Oh no, they're all named the same. Oh, that's so annoying. Now I need to rename them one by one. Need to rename them to something random. Ah. Okay. So let's see. This one as well. One needs to be in here too. Okay, I think we should be good. Hello, Damian. How are you doing? Good to see you here. I forgot one person for today's session, so I'm quickly adding them in as well. Just that over here. Then I'm just gonna drag this underneath here. Okay, I think we're good to go now. So, Pat, what can I help with? Should I keep the glass quite opaque like the original reference, or should I make it more see-through and add a bunch of the background? Let's have a look. I think you're in luck, because if we look at the original... If we look at the original reference, right? Like, I like what is happening with the glass, because it's not really opaque. Oh, it's not really see-through, right? Like, it kind of has a pattern on it. I would honestly just keep the same thing. Because I don't want you to go out and, like, make, like, a bunch of stuff for the background just because you want to have a background, right? So I would just keep as the least amount of visible as possible. And then maybe try to fake that light is still coming in. Right? So you could have, like, a very opaque kind of glass, but it's still, like, lets through, like, some light. I think, honestly, that would be the way to go. So, add a little section here. Oh. Whoa! Hold on. Dude. Still out. Yeah, so I think you're in luck with the reference there, right? So... it basically comes down to, like, no background, like, because you're not really adding anything to it by just adding, like, a background. Right? Like, just see if you can, like, get an effect where you can fake the window still being lit, right? That's honestly what I would go for. And let's see. Got some other questions as well. So, the trim I made for the short wall is really messy. I was trying to remember a lot of things and I have forgotten, so the trim ended up becoming a lot bigger than I intended. UVs are also a bit of a mess. Should I scrap it all and make a new trim, like a unique texture? Talking about this guy over here, right? Make a new trim or a unique texture, leave it as is, working as intended, and make adjustments to it. It doesn't really look all that messy, honestly. So I don't really know what you're talking about necessarily, right? As long as it gets like the job done, really, like it can look however it wants to, right? Like the whole oh, the window? Oh wait, did I miss something? Oh, made for the short wall. Let's see. Attach it with DV2. Did I miss that? Oh, I missed a couple of posts here. I see what you mean. So we're kind of looking at this right now. I mean, like, honestly, again, like, if it works, then it works, right? Like, it might look a little bit messy, but as long as you're maximizing the space that you use, I don't really mind, like, how messy it looks. It's more just about, like, how usable it is, right? So I don't necessarily mind this all too much. Let's see. Let's go. Yeah, and then over here we can kind of see how it's applied, right? Yeah, like, the UVs for the trim sheet, like, they don't matter. Like, honestly. Like, as long as, like, the edges map to the edges of the trim sheet, right? Like, that's all you need to care about. Like, the trim sheet can look as messy as it needs to do. Like, the ones that I have for, like, my assets for my medieval scene, like, they look, like, really screwed up, you know? So, yeah. Should I downside the texture? It is currently 4K, I think, and 4x4 meters, if I remember correctly. I feel like the resolution isn't doing much right now. So if your resolution is 4K and you're doing it by like 4x4 meters, then you're working with like a resolution of 1K per meter, right? That means that you'll have to up the resolution of your entire scene, and you're working with a higher texel density, right? Which you could do. So that's up to you. If you feel like it's too low resolution, then you should go higher. But this is gonna be interesting, right? Because right now what is happening then is that you have like a really big trim sheet because you're trying to maximize the space, right? Like the trim sheets themselves don't really matter because you can scale them up and down as many as you want, right? You can have like a strip that is going outside of the UV space. The only issue is like the main part of the window, right? Because you need the resolution there and you can't really optimize it any other way. So that's a thing where... How would I do this? Let's have a look at the window again. Let me also get like this in really quick. So we got the UV here. Scale it down a little bit more. Yeah, because so for the current way that you're doing it, like this stuff doesn't really matter if it's within like your UV space, right? I just want to make sure that is clear. Like you can have a strip that is like this long. As long as it's mapped on the trim, it doesn't matter, right? The only issue with your trim sheet that you currently have is because you have a unique part on it as well, the window, and you need the resolution for that window, right? But if the window is taller than 4 meters and you're going for like a higher resolution, then you need to find a way to either optimize the way that you're doing the window and like chop it up into like a couple of sections, right? Where you can map it in a different way. Or you have to make a really big texture, right? But we don't want to go higher than 4K in general. So I would look, let's see, as like a quick solution, right? What I would try to look for is maybe these metal trims. I don't know if they're actually geo or not, but I would make them geo, and then you can introduce like cuts into the window here and just reuse like the same section, right? So this section of the window would actually also be this section here because it looks like they're the same, right? You can get like a little bit of reuse there. Could maybe make the window trim tileable? I'm not sure what part of the trim you mean, right? Because these trims are supposed to be tileable, right? Like the window, what you could save is like this section, right? Because this section right here, if you flip it, then you kind of have this section as well. Same for this section here too, right? So again, you just flip it and then you have like the same section. So that means that we only need like the core section, or maybe even like half of it, right? Like if we're really smart. We could symmetry to glass. The only issue with that is that if we add some noise to it, it's going to be symmetried as well. So I don't think symmetry in the glass down the middle here is a solution, but you can definitely get rid of like these two sections over here for sure. That's a guarantee. But yeah, what I would do is we kind of talked about the trim, right? So I would honestly say like use the trim. And what I mean with better is that you can use trims as like tileable sections, right? Because right now we're kind of using it as a unique section where it doesn't need to be. So that means that we can optimize it more, right? So this would mean that we have to redo the trim, right? And like optimize it a little bit more. And then maybe the window itself can be like a unique texture, right? Or if you can find place on like your trim, right? Like your window trim, maybe you can still incorporate that into it. But you need to make sure that it has like the room to have like a proper resolution, right? If you're thinking about like up-resing the whole scene. Feel like it would have been okay with 3 strips of metal, indents with bevels, glass portion, foundation. Let's see. Yeah, you're saying it yourself, right? You ended up not even using half of the texture. That means that you can like really optimize the way that you're currently using it, right? You have these like 3 sections as well. You can't really see it with the UVs overlaid, right? But like most of this stuff looks very similar to each other. So you could easily like optimize those spaces. And even like the stuff that you have here, you could possibly also just lay on top of here as well. Maybe apart from the bigger chunks, right? So there's definitely like room for optimization here for sure. For sure. Hey Andrea! Hope everyone is doing well today. Yeah, I'm doing well, Andrea. How are you doing? Great, been practicing level design and environment art as usual. Awesome. And then Damian is asking, the medieval scene is finished. No, I've not touched like any sort of art in like the last couple of months. I've been way too busy with just like getting a lot of stuff done for the community, the website, and all that kind of stuff. So my attention is kind of diverted at the point. And also we're preparing for the move to the UK in like 2 weeks as well, like roughly. So yeah, busy times. Let's see. And then back to the question that you were having, right? So the trim I made for the really short wall is really messy. Yeah, that's the one we discussed, right? So, and then 3 is I started finalizing my small props with Atlas texture sheets, but they look a little bit low poly since I didn't bake any details. How can I improve on this? Oh, in that case, you should still bake details, right? I'm sorry if I misexplained that last time around, but like an atlas is you can have multiple assets that are baked down on the same atlas, right? That's what I meant with that. So yeah, you can bake those down, and you kind of need to look at an atlas as just like a collection of like multiple multiple assets, right? Let's see. I'm curious about which assets you're talking about though. Because we got this book stand, which honestly doesn't look too bad, right? I think it's more about like the texturing here rather than anything else. I think. Let's see, small props. Yeah. Because it doesn't look too bad, but like usually the difference between like a trim sheet is that we can't add like a bunch of unique detail to it, right? Which makes sense, because if we add like unique detail to it, then it's going to appear like all over the trim sheet, and that's not what we want, right? We want unique detail specific to the object that we apply it to. So usually the trim sheet is only the base. So a trim is the base, and then we add like additional layers on top of that. Usually this is done through RGB masking, right? Very common technique. Which is basically you take that asset into Substance Painter and you bake like black and white masks, and then you use those masks as a guide where you're gonna add like your sand, moss, whatever you want to have like as layers, right? So those masks that you bake out, they're basically going to indicate wherever the additional texture layers are going to be on top of the base trim, right? So that's like a way of adding like additional detail to the trim if you require it, right? So the combination of the two is probably what you're looking for. When it comes to the actual low polyness of it, there's two ways, right? Like you can bake your bevels down into the texture itself, or you could add a bevel yourself as well, depending on what you have a preference for. Should I have a Substance Painter with all of them low poly and then all of the high poly versions and bake them down all at once? Yeah, you can do, or you can separate them all individually as well. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? Well, I guess it does matter if you want to make it like really easy on yourself, because then if you bake it, right, you don't have to worry about like handling like multiple textures and like overlapping them on top of each other. If you have all your information in the program already, and then you bake it down, then it's going to be baked down for like every single asset already, right? And then you can just start texturing. It's just way easier to do it in one scene, in hindsight. So yeah, good update, Cat. I love to see what you're doing here. I'm a big fan of what I'm already seeing, right? Yeah, nice and speedy progress as well. So keep that up, and yeah, you know the drill by now, right? Like, feel free to tag me next week if you want more feedback. All right. Awesome, thank you, no worries. And then we're gonna go on to Adam J. So Adam is over here. Let's see, where's Adam? Adam is making this really cool project over here. I really like the way that it looks already. Very vibrant, you know, very refreshing from what you would normally see. I like it. So let's see what Adam is looking for, right? This environment I'm making is supposed to be part of a golf cart racetrack inside of a university campus. I'm going for a kind of cartoony look with brighter colors. The area is very foliaged with some fancy looking trees and bushes. Can you all give me some insight on how I should fill the space and make it... How could I improve the look? Please and thank you. Okay, so I didn't read this text, and I didn't know about like all the context, right? But if you really want to sell it as like a course, right? As like a kind of racing course, I think you just have to look at like what are some of the things that are like very typical to these races, right? Because my mind immediately goes to those very stereotypical, what are they called? Like soap box races or something like that, where the track is also like marked by hay bales as well, right? So that could be like a good addition. And if you want to go with like the fun, vibrant, like kind of style, right? Like the cartoony style, like have a shot where you have like a start and a finish line, right? Because currently, just from looking at it, it wasn't clear to me that this was actually like a racing course. So having some sort of like indication of like a start and a finish line, that could definitely already work. And then just have like what I'm thinking about is having these like what are they called? Like crayons? Like basically crayons that you can write on concrete, right? That usually come in like a lot of like very playful colors. The correct name? Concrete crayons? We're gonna write it down anyway. But having those markings on the floor, you know, when someone is supposed to take a turn, you could have like a very playful like drawn concrete crayon like arrow on the floor, right? Yeah, chalk. That's the word that I'm looking for, Jacob. Thank you so much. So that could be cool, right? Where you could have like little sections of like little arrows that kind of guide you, and it makes it like a very playful like racing course, right? Because I do like the barriers, but like the barriers feel a little bit too perfect. Like they feel too campusy almost. To like indicate. Aren't that just color chalks? Yeah, Hudson. 100%. But yeah, these feel like a little bit too perfect, and I kind of didn't know why they were there. Right? They kind of just felt like set dressing. They didn't really indicate that it was a course. So, yeah. Chalk. Let me erase that. Chalk. And then you have a start and a finish line, and then maybe some like festival bunting or something like that, right? And think about like you could do like so much cool stuff. Like imagine that you make like fake sponsors, but the sponsors are actually just like kid drawings or something like that, right? You could do some like really fun stuff with this. So yeah, you could have like banners of like a sponsor on the side, right? And maybe it's like two wooden poles that are like hastily slapped together, and then you have like a fabric banner, and then there's just like a child's drawing like stick figurines like as like a little sponsor on it or something like that, right? If you really want to go with like the very cartoony vibes, right? And just have a look at some of the older games, right? Like there's a game that I used to play like a lot. Called Revolt. It was kind of like racing with RC cars. Let me see if we can get some inspiration from that game. Oh my god, such an old game. Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna get too much out of this, right, in terms of inspiration, but let's see. I don't think this is gonna be too helpful. What you could do though is put some obstacles, right? Like you already have your barriers. Like maybe maybe you could like place some of the barriers like in a way where it looks like it's an obstacle thing, right? Does he want the cartoony and realistic vibes at the same time? Yeah, I think that works, right? Like you can make something. This very much reminds me of like Power Wash Simulator or something like that, right? Where it's like very vibrant and like semi-realistic, right? It kind of reminds me of those kind of vibes. Yeah, just having like, especially on the straight line, right? Like if you imagine like some obstacles like being here, that could really indicate that you have to like zigzag, and like it could make the course like more interesting, right? Yeah. Fill the space and improve the look, and then yeah, you have like, you know, like finish line over here. You have like little bits of bunting. Then what would it make look like a finish line? Well, I guess you would. Right, you would have like a. Is texturing hard during the old days? Are you calling me old, Hudson? I mean, I look old, but I'm only 32, man. Come on. I mean, it was hard though. Like my first job was, even though it's not too long ago, right? I had to texture in Quixel Dedo when Quixel was still known for a company that was making like a way too elaborate Photoshop add-on instead of making Megascans. And if you want to have fun, look that up. Oh my god. Imagine... Okay, so imagine like a layering system like in Substance Painter, but then it would like have to recalculate like all the layers individually, like every time you made like a little change. Oh, the previous example you gave makes me think how to do textures way back. I mean, honestly, like a lot of those things, I don't know in this case, it's honestly like way simpler, right? Because it's just like pictures that are just like mapped onto things. In most cases. Right? But I think it is. So in a way, it's just like way simpler. Right? It's just like photo bashing almost. And then you just change the colors and yeah. I don't know. There's probably way more to it, right? You just have to be like really good in Photoshop, basically. Now we have all these fancy programs to do it all for us, right? But yeah. I hope this helped, Adam. You got a couple more ideas. Keep it up. I'm loving the style. Yeah. Keep it going. And we're gonna hop on straight to the next one. Next one is Joe. Got little Joe over here making a little diorama. I mean, I don't know if you're little. I was more making an insinuation about like the diorama itself. Yeah, this is looking really cool already. Looking really nice. We're using some heavy tilt shift to make it look like a little miniature, right? That always works. So for those who don't know, feel free to Google that. It's like photography technique called tilt shift. It's really cool if you want to make something like look like a miniature. There's some awesome examples for that. Let's see what we can help Joe with this time around. I'm trying to go for realism, but the artillery, it should look like a painted plastic model, which I think is working at the moment. I wanted to ask for feedback on the lighting and the composition mainly. Also, are 3 4K textures overkill for the artillery? Not really. Like, you can use like multiple textures on like something like this, right? We would really have to do like a breakdown of how the textures are used and like how efficient you're in using them, right? Because I get the feeling that 3 4K textures or something like this is a bit overkill, and you can like optimize like a bunch of stuff about it. But we need to take like a deeper look into it, right? So, and honestly, at this point, if you're already this far along, I probably wouldn't change anything about it, right? It's kind of just at this point, it kind of is what it is. So I would use your next project to really optimize the textures wherever you can, right? Like using symmetry and like reuse, right? Just general reuse. I think you can get a lot out of it. I always love coming here and listening to our work. I'm gonna work from home, so it's a little bit lonely working alone. I get it, man. I get it. I've been working alone for the past almost 2 years. So I can understand, and I'm happy to assist. But yeah, that's what I would say. Like, it's a little bit overkill. Hudson is saying, I find it a good practice to just work with 2K textures, even with environments. Yeah, same here for the most part, right? Like, there are like good cases where you can make like a good case. So, for example, the wood that I'm using on my medieval project, right? That's a 4K map. But that is also used like literally everywhere, and I'm also using it on like pretty big surfaces as well. So if I wasn't doing that, I could probably turn it down to like a 2K, right? If I was using it on like smaller surfaces, but I need to cover big surfaces too. So yeah, but that's only like one 4K map, right? In that case, so that's not too bad. But yeah. Yeah, like honestly, what you could try is turn all the textures to 2K. You can do that in Unreal Engine, right? There's like I don't know what it's called anymore. I think texture mid mapping or something like that. You can actually just down res it in the engine really easily. But turn it to 2K and see if you're losing any noticeable quality. Right? That could be like a really quick way of still making it feasible, because like 3 2K textures on like a prop like this are like super reasonable to me. It's only when it goes to like 3 4K ones that I'm like, it's probably not required, right? So I would give that a try first to see how that works. And then you were also asking about some feedback for the lighting as well, right? Feedback on the lighting and the composition. Sure, I will give that a go. Awesome, Joe. That's the thing, right? I wouldn't change it for this project necessarily, right? I wouldn't start like rejigging your UVs and like re-baking and all that kind of stuff, right? Because it's a bit too late for that. But yeah, if you can show like that like 2K works, like that can be like convincing other people that are looking at your project on ArtStation too. Yeah, what about the composition? The main shot is pretty cool, right? Like it works really well. We've got some cool additional shots too. I think in this one, depth of field is too strong. Like it is really strong, right? Where like we can't even see like a large part of what is happening in this screenshot, right? And I even had to like even cropped it a little bit as well. I think just like a little bit less depth of field can work really well with this guy. Like with this one, I don't mind it as much as the other one, right? Because we get to see like a little bit more. But yeah, maybe play around with it a little bit. But yeah, composition, pretty solid. I would say, let's see. Yeah, with this one, right? With this one, I would watch the space because your object is intersecting with the frame, right? Just give it like a little bit more space to breathe. Like just on the sides, right? Like the stuff you're doing here works fine, right? Just apply that to like the left side as well. It's so quiet. It's hard to get it quite right because the scale is so tiny in Unreal. Yeah, man. Yeah. I know. It's very finicky, right? You're playing with like lots of decimals when it comes to doing depth of field at this scale, especially. Yeah. I would say the lighting, in my opinion, can be like even like more contrasted. Where we're seeing less of the environment, but more of the actual... Well, not more. But like you could almost have like a really strong vignette. That is just like cutting out like a bunch of the background as well. Because I'm not really interested in like most of the background, right? I kinda want my focus to be here, and then the rest of it, like you can almost like black it out. Not completely, right? But you could hide it in shadows. Maybe... Let's see. No, it's a dodge. No. Always get confused by these tools, man. What am I even doing? I'm making it darker or lighter? That too. Whatever. Highlights, maybe? I have no idea what is happening. It's changed. Anyway. Andrea says, I like the detail of the paint on the mat underneath the model. Yeah, there's some really cool details over here, right? And like, the bottles in the back, I really like them as well. Like, they add to the whole vibe, right? I thought you can change the texture resolution on the fly in Unreal, like with Substance. Yeah, you can. You can. You can basically tell it to like only render up until like a certain point. Yeah, I'm gonna try again because I'm thoroughly confused with what's happening here. Am I just duplicating the wrong one? I am, right? So stupid of me. Guys, why didn't you tell me? Help me out here. There we go. Okay. Okay. So. I honestly feel that we can just cover up a lot of this. Really make it like really contrasty. I love playing around with this stuff. This is what I do like regularly with my own stuff as well. With my own screenshots, where I'm just like, I'm just gonna take it into Photoshop and play around with it a little bit. Right? And then you get like all the focus happening on like the main point, instead of it being like... We kind of get this feeling that this light is just like super contrasted. It's going to give you like a good look. But the rest of it like matters less than it currently does, right? That's the way that I would play it. The mat is just a picture of one from home. That's perfect, man. I love that. That's genius, you know? If you got it lying around, why like try to replicate it? You know? That's honestly perfect, man. Genius. All right. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Great little project that you got going on. I love it. Just like push the contrast around, and I think who was it? Jacob says the work light might be a cooler temp than the background. It might be a cooler temp, or it should be, because I feel the work light currently, like the ones with like neutral or like a bluish light, like those are like usually like working lights, right? Like the ones that you see in like hospitals and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of makes sense. Do you add in vignette in Unreal, or would you do that through normal lights? Whatever's the easiest. Like you could do a vignette, but like a vignette is like a screen space effect, right? So what I would try to do instead is I would play around with the post-processing for this one. So where you can increase like the contrast for specific values, right? Whatever's the easiest for you, right? You can take a LUT texture, like a color lookup table texture. You can have that in Photoshop, do all the adjustments, and then bring it back to Unreal, and then it will take like all the adjustments that you've done from Photoshop to Unreal, right? Very cool stuff that you can do with that. Because honestly, like in the beginning, like all the Unreal tools are so convoluted, right? Especially for post-processing and like color grading, if you're not used to them. So if you're like, all these dials and like changes, they look scary, try to do it with a LUT instead. Or you could just do it in post, right? Just have a final render and then take it into Photoshop and then have that as like your final thing. You could also do it that way. It's totally fine. Okay, Joe, best of luck. This is looking great, man. Looking great. I've always liked the idea of just like having like miniatures rendered, right? Like just playing around with the fact that you can have like a miniature in 3D, like a tilt shift effect. Looks really cool. All right, on to the next one. Who is next? Oh, Jacob. Jacob is next. Jacob is checking in with some progress on the scene and the main prop. Where is Jacob? Jacob is over here. Okay, thank you very much. I will work on those. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing, Joe. That's awesome. Other people believe post is cheating, but it's not. Nah. I get it. Like, I get why people think that is, right? But it's definitely not. Like, we do it in the industry all the time, right? It's usually not in Photoshop, but you do it in a different program, right? Usually the game engine. You have a bunch of post-processing effects. Oh my god. I'm just imagining, like, games running without post-processing. That would actually be really cool to see, you know? If you had a game that was just like, okay, we're going to disable, like, all post-processing, just because you can see the effect that it's having on the game itself. That would be nuts. That would be nuts. Anyway, Jacob. Otherwise, I'm wondering if the scene is getting too beige while period accurate. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. As far as I can tell, I may have gone too far with the mustard and brown scheme. I've made some progress on the lighting. I'm going for softer indoor quality of light, so I'm relying on a mix of HDRIs and place lights. That's good. I like what I'm seeing already. It's looking real nice. We're really getting that old school vibe. You know? The vibes that you're going for, like the very old school kind of vibes. Like we're getting really on point with that. And then having like this very unique like texture style, right? The posters work brilliantly as well. They're like really a really nice addition. Like I would say you can even stack them up more, right? So you have like layers and layers of posters. That would be really cool. Because that's usually what they look like. Like the next event is around the corner and people just like post over it, right? So that you have like layers and layers of build up underneath it. Kind of becomes like caked around the whole thing. But that's really cool. As far as detailing goes, I've been trying to keep in mind the 80-20 rule that was mentioned during the last project. And I think the prop might need some more noise reduction, but I'm not sure. So the prop is over here, right? I can see that you're trying to keep in mind, man. Like it's really coming through over here. You're definitely gonna get a little bit more of that, right? Because of the art style that you've chosen. Like the art style that you've chosen is gonna introduce like more variation and randomness into the thing, right? But the way that you're doing it, it's not really distracting from like the main shapes, right? Because there's like a separation between like the big shapes, for example, you know, like the buttons, like very different than the main body, so we get like a clear distinction between those. But if we look at the details here, they're not too distracting because we can still read it as being part of the main shape, right? So the amount of detail doesn't necessarily make sense. Makes a difference, sorry. It just depends on the way that you apply it. That makes sense. But yeah, sticking with the 80-20 rule is definitely great. I can see that you're adhering to that too. Because we are getting, like, through your texturing, like a really nice, like, a weathered look without it being like super distracting, right? Will do. Should what's on the posters be more detailed or less? I honestly like them as is. Like, they kind of have like a really graphical quality to it, right? Where you can't even see like the text, which I don't think is like a bad choice at all. I think that's actually like genius, because then you don't need to be bothered by like finding good fonts and all that stuff, like era appropriate fonts, right? So I like what you're doing, man. I don't think you need to change like all too much to the posters. I kind of like them the way that they are, like very simplified, very graphical, right? That's why you want them there, right? You kind of want them as like splashes of like color, right? And they kind of achieve that here. Yeah. Looks nice. Love it. Let's see. So yeah, I think the prop is fine when it comes to like the noise reduction, right? We can clearly distinguish like what it is, like we're not getting lost in like what the different elements are. Yeah, I don't mind. Like maybe if I was being like really picky about it, right? Like this stuff, I have no clue what that says, right? So at that point, like, does it need to be there? Probably not. But then that's like a small thing about like the whole object at the moment, right? Is that can be removed without any consequence. If anything, it will be more distracting if you add detail to the posters. Yeah, I agree, Hudson. So I think once you start adding like a font or like a type to it, right? then people will be like, oh, what does it say? Right? And now it's just like, hey, it's a poster, it's a graphical representation of one, and that's awesome. Let's see, I still have a couple of small props to make. Need to make decals and add post-processing. I'm planning on presenting the scene as a turnaround with a couple of close renders. Same goes to the voice recorder. Yeah, you could honestly have... Where's the voice recorder? Yeah, you could have the voice recorder here and have like a slow pan or something like that, right? To really showcase like the voice recorder. And then once you do a breakdown of the voice recorder, that's where you have it isolated, like kind of like you have now with like a nice gradient in the back. And then break it down by like wireframe, textures, UVs, all that kind of stuff, right? That's the way that I would play it. So you would have like 1 or 2 main shots, and then you have like a couple of detail shots, and then you go into like the breakdowns of everything, right? Like how everything is built. Yeah, the level of detail is fine, man. Jammy is coming in with a good suggestion. I feel like a brighter AGRI might help with the Walkman render. The metal reflections are quite dark. Yeah. That is actually a good point. Now that I'm looking at it, it might not even be like the metal reflections. It might be the indication of where the fingerprints have been. Right? We're getting some darkness here, which I don't really mind, but like this sort of stuff. Yeah. I 100% agree with what you're saying, right, Jamie? I'm just wondering if it is like a very... It's almost like a graphical statement, right? Where it goes so far out of the comfort zone that it just becomes like more about like, hey, the graphical thing that you're trying to say, right? Yeah. I'm gonna leave this one up to you, Jacob. I can totally see what Jamie is saying. Oh, Jamie, sorry. There's some wear there, but it probably shouldn't be full black. Yeah, I feel because the same is happening here too, right? And like you have like fingerprints that are like affecting the surface. So maybe something is happening there in like some of the maps, like maybe the metallic map, right? Because that has such... Don't think it's gonna be... Could be... Well, I can't really tell, right? It could be metallic or roughness. But yeah. Great catch, Jamie. Thanks for popping in and saying that. That's awesome. Hudson is saying stylized mats don't even need metallic maps, right? It depends on what kind of style you want to go for, right? I personally love the combination of like stylized materials, like very stylized graphical materials that also use like metallic maps and roughness maps, right? Like the stuff that we're seeing here, like I'm a really big fan of because you get like hints of realism while it being like super graphical as well. Like there's like a cool like contrast that happens there. But yeah. Yeah, I like it. I also like that you're going with your own style, right? That's what I said with the last project as well. Like you have your own vision and you try to like deliver on that vision. It's very clear that you're trying to do the same thing here. And I would honestly say like keep that up, right? Try to be bold in your decisions as you're trying to do here with like maybe some of the decisions that you made for the voice recorder too, right? It's really interesting to see that. So keep that up, Jacob. It's honestly like a bit harder to critique, right? Because I kind of need to try to anticipate like all the choices that you've made. But yeah. It's looking great though. Oh, and about like the colors, I honestly don't think it's like too beige, right? I feel like it kind of goes in like the very... Man, this takes me back to like, you know, old malls that you can just look at them and you can tell that they're old just by like how outdated like it looks. Like I feel like that's the look that we're getting right now, right? Like it's just, it doesn't have an old mall look, right? But it definitely has that old look, right? Like old style. This is almost like what we talked about before, right? Like I can see this at like the old airport here in Berlin, like Tegel, which, man, that like takes you back. I can see that happening there. Yeah, cool stuff, Jacob. Kind of ugly on purpose, yes. But don't tell your grandmother that though. 70s style? Yeah. Yeah, those chairs are still comfortable. Yeah. Like a groovy style? Yeah, it's like this weird combination of like sometimes they didn't even know what they were doing, right? They were just like experimenting and they were trying to like bash stuff together and yeah. Sometimes it really works, but sometimes it just ages horribly. Oh my god. Cool, thank you so much, Jacob. Appreciate it, man. Who is up next? Going through them one by one. So next up, we've got... where are you in the list? I'm sure that I added you. Woyox. There we go. Woyox is back with their awesome Star Wars environment. So great to see. I like what you're doing with the interior, right? Just straight off the bat. The main thing that I would say, and this is going to be like nitpicking, right? Is like that VFX kind of looks like a little bit weird, right? I would honestly say find something different that probably has like a bit of a larger spread, right? That kind of like billows up like they're actually smoking something. Oh, sorry, Liz. I know that we opened up on yours. But you are... Oh, in a couple. So yeah, that's like the main thing that stands out immediately to me, right? But I like what you did with the vibes here. Let's see. Like the same shop? Oh, that's just like a little bit further along, right? Okay. That's cool. I wish there was also close-ups of it. This is awesome. Yeah, that would actually be a good point, right? Like, just having like the main shots and then having like possible like close-ups, right? So the main shots are awesome. More additional shots, maybe? I'm gonna ask that question, right? Because I don't want to say that you really need it, but it could be cool if you find the opportunity to add more, right? With the stuff that already exists. Now let's get on to the questions. So, hey, I've worked a bit on the storytelling and other details. I've revamped the floor, added footprints, and trampled sand. I didn't pay attention. Let's have a look. The trampled sand is good. Like that. I mean, honestly, at this stage, like, I can't really make out the footprints necessarily. Unless... It's hard to tell with loose sand, honestly. But, like, even if you have the indication of trampled sand, right? We can clearly see that there's an area where people pass through. Compared to what we had before, right? You can see that, like, no one really wants to walk here, but you have, like, this thoroughfare, like, in the middle. Which is all we wanted, right? That's some nice handwriting. Oh, thanks, Andrea. But yeah, I would say that that worked out well, right? Like the footprints and like the trampled sand, all that kind of stuff works really well because now we get the indication of people walking through. That worked out really nice. So etc. Like they work. That's like checkbox tick. Pretty happy with how it turned out, and I think I'll post it soon, like at the end of the week. Any feedback is welcome. Okay, my idea is to post a scene with a day and night version of it, but I don't know if that's a good idea. So I already gave like a little bit of a hint to this, right? Earlier today. But yeah, I wanted to say that if you want to do something like that, right? It's a really good idea. But the only thing that you need to do is like give us something more, right? Like what's going to be the what's going to be the difference between the two shots? I think you can make like a really impactful statement where maybe like during the day, these guys not in the picture. But then at night, like they're trying to, I don't know, maybe this door is like only halfway open. And we get the indication that there's still like stuff going on, and these guys are coming in to like shut the party down. Right? So you could still have them here. Maybe you have like 2 guys walking in front, and then maybe like a bunch of them in the back, right? So that we try to separate like the 2 guys walking in front to make it like a little bit more personal. And then you could have like light coming out of here, and they're like moving up to like shut the party down. I think something like that would like elevate it to compared to what you had going before, right? Where it's just like, oh, I'm changing the light. I want to see what the effect of the light has on the vibes in the town, right? So that's the way that I would play it. I would add like a little bit of a storytelling to it too, if you're doing a change in lighting setup as well. So a different lighting equals to a different story, right? That's an easy way to see it. Whatever those stories are, I gave you one example, but that's totally up to you, right? Just, yeah. Make it look real cool, right? Like add a little bit of variation in there. It could be really nice that you get like an indication of people are just doing their day-to-day business, right? But then we would need characters, and obviously these guys are probably really easy to find, but like trying to find like just people wandering, well, specifically Star Wars, just random people wandering, that's going to be tricky to find, right? So we gotta work with whatever we get. And then also small changes, right? Like at night, the lights are up. In the day, lights are down. Especially these lights, right? Because they seem to like indicate that like the store is open or something like that. You can just change that. Yeah, but that's what I would say. Like try to change up like the difference in lighting and make use of it, right? Like again, try to tell a story with it. Which that's the reason why these guys are here in the first place, right? Because you wanted to add a story, which is freaking awesome. Right? It already elevates this piece on top of what it was previously, because before we didn't really have anything going on, right? Well, I don't want to say anything. There was already like a really good foundation going on, right? But adding these people in, like, it gives us drama, right? Lilian is saying, I like the idea, and I also thought about adding color variations to the lights in the stand, like a pink light coming from the stand in the street. Hopefully, hope I'm clear. Oh, like these kind of lights that we're seeing here? Yeah, I mean, some sort of like light variation could be good as well, right? It's totally up to you. Like where you add like different sort of lights. Yeah, I would say play around with it, right? Because you could also Let me think. So I'm trying to think what could be interesting is I'm always thinking about like contrast between colors, right? So in the daylight, we have orange versus blue, right? And in the night, we sort of have the same thing, but I want to kind of inverse it, right? So you would have like blue for the most part, right? Because you already kind of have it here because we're not getting as much bounce light coming from the sun on the sand, right? And then have like an orange light maybe coming from within, right? Because orange also has like a more vibrant feel to it, right? So you could kind of assume that there's like a party going on or something like that. And what you could even do, we're gonna cheat a little bit here, right? But if you take one of these guys, right, you take one of these characters and you place them out of bounds here where you can't see the legs, but you have like a light that kind of shines like directly at them, and we create like these really long like silhouetted shapes on the floor, indicating that there's like people inside, right? You can try and play around with that sort of trickery to indicate that there's actually like a party going on inside and we're seeing the shadows of people like being cast onto the floor, right? Because then we get like an additional layer of drama because now we're actually seeing the people that are probably going to face like real consequences from this angry bunch like coming at them, right? I think that could be cool to play around with. Yeah. It would be the only... It's not an issue really, right? But like the only thing that I'm then wondering is like, but if you add like a bunch of indications to characters in the top part, maybe people also want to see like characters at the bottom too, right? Because if we're going to remove these guys, then we don't really have any characters anymore in the main shot. Maybe it is worth looking for whatever you can find to dress up the scene with like a couple of characters, right? Even if it's just like a guy walking in the distance or something like that with like a bunch of rags on his on himself and maybe like one or two in the foreground. That would really be like the cherry on top, you know? If you are lucky enough to find like characters that can fulfill that. So, number 4 is Amma. Link to storytelling, right? This is basically what we talked about before, is like the shadows of people that you can use. And then like stormtroopers coming in, rush the party, right? That's what we're trying to set up. So if we zoom out a little bit, right, what we have is first we have like a very serene like day shot, and then we go into the night where we get like a real glimpse of like, hey, these guys, like they're still in control of this area, right? And they mean business. So you could maybe have like, I don't know, a stormtrooper like standing around here on the side, like just keeping watch, right? And then maybe you can find like a couple of other people that walk around in the scene casually. That would be nice though. But yeah, I know how difficult it is to find some of that. But yeah, like I said last week, freaking awesome scene, Lilian. I really do mean that, right? Like the attention to detail and like how it actually already feels like it's in universe, like it's very striking. So great job on that. Like all the stuff that we talked about today is more like to put like the cherry on top of it, right? So best of luck. Thanks for posting it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next update, really. Let me make a final note here. Gate partially closed, right? Indicate what the hell I was doing here. Cool. Thank you so much, Lilian. Next up. Who is next? Oh, and also, do you think that the streets need more props, like fruit baskets and other props? I don't think so. I think if you could make them make sense, right? If you, let's say you find additional people and there's like a street vendor on the floor, I think you can maybe have like one of them in the scene, right? But I don't think you need to. Right? I think the scene right now has like a really strong base. Like we're getting the sense that this is like, it's not a vibrant market, right? It's more like, it's like a partially illegal run market on a planet that is like heavily under pressure by like its regime, right? So there is like a style, or there is like an indication of the tone and the mood already by not having vibrancy in the market already, right? So I don't think it needs to. Short answer. Bodhi is saying, I love using 3D characters in environments, but sometimes I wonder if it's bad in the sense that I can't tell stories with the environment alone. Am I completely wrong with that thought? Well, there's no way around it, right? Like, environments can tell like a story by themselves, right? But characters in that environment are always going to make it more relatable because they come in with like their own sort of baggage into the scene, right? Which usually makes it more relatable to us. Like, we can relate ourselves immediately with a person and their struggles in life, but we can't really do that with a building, right? Even if that building has like a ton of history, went through like a bunch of stuff, we don't have that connection with a building, right? Like, I think that's the issue. Like, we always gravitate towards like the characters because that's something that we can relate to. But yeah, that doesn't mean that you can't tell stories with the environment alone, right? Because in your last piece, for example, where you just had like the garage with the hover bike in it, that was telling a story by itself, but it's just that story got elevated by then adding like a character into it, right? Because the store itself, or like the shop itself, was a mechanic shop, right? You can tell that someone was working on maintaining that vehicle, right? But then once you start adding the character into it and she was racing the hover bike, now we can see the character behind that story. You can nail a story without characters and you're good at storytelling. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to really think about an example where characters aren't in the picture. Right? Because even with like very historical monuments, it's because usually there's important people attached to it too. Right? But like, that doesn't mean that an environment by itself can't really tell anything, right? Oh, I was just wondering if recruiters see it that way I explained. No, because the things that I'm explaining, right, or like the explanation that I just gave you, is like an industry-wide thing, right? It's not that same with me, right? Like the work that I did on Far Cry, for example, right? Let's remove people from that picture. Is it going to be more or less impactful if we remove them, right? It's going to be less impactful. No matter how good you make the environments, right? Like if you don't, I mean, I've never played the games, but like if you can you have your typical locations in like an Uncharted game, right? But would they be the same without Nathan Drake? No, right? This is kind of weird coming from like an environment artist, right? But like there's something like, I mean, it kind of makes sense to a certain degree to me too, right? That psychologically we can build like a better bond with like a character on screen than it is just like a building with a lot of history on screen, right? The beauty comes when the two work really well together, though. That's where we see real beauty happening, right? Well, and especially with gameplay. Yeah, but it's a good question though. Like it's not in the sense that you were kind of just asking for recruiter purposes, right? But it's an interesting question that I want to think about more. Yeah. Because it's just like a different way of storytelling, right? That's the difference there. Cool. Let's have a look. Who's next in line? So we got Sami, who's next. Sami is over here. Soviet? Damn, Tim, you need to play Uncharted. Oh my god. So many games that I haven't played. I've only played, like, I haven't played any of the new God of Wars. I've only played the old ones. I haven't played Uncharted. Barely played any of the Metro game. Not the Metro games, the Halo games. There's so many games that I'm just missing out on, right? Alright, Sami, let's have a look. Most of the props are used for presentation of the screens are from Megascans. That's fine. That works really well. I'd like to hear some feedbacks on the texturing, presentation, and open for other feedback. I put in all the shots I've made, but I'm not sure to put each in one of them. I'm planning on doing a bit of Photoshop on the wireframe one to put all the textures next to it. Oh, okay. Yeah. I would honestly say that you could, for the Photoshop one, right? Man, you've got like the perfect example here. So I would not do this guy. I would just use this guy over here. Extend the frame, right? So you have like a landscape one. And then just have like all your textures and your information like over here instead. That's the way that I would do it. Because you got such a beautiful environment set up that just have to double down on it, right? And make use of it. That's the way that I would play it. So use the environment more in breakdowns as well, right? And if we're gonna talk like really advanced, right? It's been a while since I've done this. But like I think this might be a specific use case where you can tag this object with a specific tag. Oh god, I need to look this up again. Okay, I'm actually gonna see if we can make use of the new feature that we added today to the website. Let's see if it works. So, gonna have like a quick look here. Yes, so, okay, so you can basically build your own like green screen and then replace like whatever is in the back, right? But what you can do in this case is you could use it in your scene to basically isolate like the object from the background, right? And then you could render the background without the object behind it or something like that. And then you isolate the two so that you're not changing the background, but maybe you're only changing the object, right? Whenever you're switching between your texture maps, for example. So base color, roughness, all that kind of stuff. Might be interesting to experiment with, right? But there's probably going to be like a bunch of stuff online about this, like green screen renders in Unreal Engine. I think that might be like really interesting for you to explore, especially if you're doing like some sort of like transition between like multiple frames. Let's see. So feedback on the texturing, right? The texturing looks pretty generic in some places, right? Where you have this sort of stuff, where you can clearly see that it's like a generator. You need to break those sections up, right? Like usually what you do is, I mean, this is very generic advice, right? So you could have like your base generator, which is like pretty uniform, right? And then you layer on top of it like a texture. And then on top of that, you have a painted layer where you go in and like manually paint like stuff out as well. And you can apply like the same sort of thinking with like some of the other regions as well, right? Because it has like a very generic kind of feel to the texturing right now, especially on the metal part. It's not as apparent on like the main part here, I would say. Like the metal parts, you just have to go in and like give it the good old hand painted like touch, right? Spend like a little bit more time on it. Textures are a little bit too generator-y. That's what I'm calling it. So, yeah, just add like a couple more layers to it, right? And then paint some stuff out as well. In the mask, right? David is saying, or have the background blurry and more opacity there with that feature. Yeah, you could also do that. You could. You definitely could. And then the presentation. I think the presentation is bang on, man. Like I really feel that like you've really stepped it up. Like after we did like the mentorship last month, and you really stepped up your game when it comes to the presentation, because this is not what I expected to see when you showed me like the early stages of the lightsaber before, right? But this is freaking awesome, right? It looks really good. Like has a really clean presentation to it. If we're gonna be nitpicking, the light that you have here in the bowl works really well as like an additional element, but right now the light is above the crystal and it's casting a shadow from the crystal onto the bowl, right? I think a really quick fix would be to have the crystal not cast a shadow, and I think you're all good then. Yeah, that's the main thing that like immediately stood out to me. You don't want it to cast shadow. The rest of it looks really good, man. Really good. Hey, well. So yeah, I think that's it. Like relatively quick because the rest of it looks really nice, man. Hey, McFall. Okay, cool. Yeah, great stuff, Sami. Freaking awesome work. This is definitely gonna help your portfolio, man. Great stuff. All right, on to the next one. Next up, we got. Oh my god, so many to do. Thank you for the feedback, Tim. Always appreciate it. No worries. Next up, we got KZ. I think this is going to be a relatively short one because it's basically just an update on what we discussed last time, right? There's no real questions in here, I think. The ground is really time consuming, but worth the effort. No questions so far. Any feedback is appreciated. Okay, so no questions this time around. It's kind of a shame that we don't have like a zoomed in shot of like or like an overview shot of the terrain in like the same section. But what I'm seeing here already looks like way better. Right, we're getting more variation. We also have like much more foliage coming in as well, which really helps. Yeah, we're also getting like some nice detailed stuff. Yeah, nice work, Casey. Great work. Keep it up. Always feel free to ask me questions, right? Because I don't really have time to go through like generic feedback unless I like notice something immediately and then I'll bring it up, right? Like if something really sticks out, then I'll do so, but yeah. So next time, we to ask some questions. Moving on up to what's next? Pyro. Pyro's next. Let's see. My nemesis has returned. Not you, Pyro. Just a building. Don't worry. Still a few details left to fix in the shape and the placement of certain elements. Also have added like quick materials only for better readability. Again, no questions, so we're just gonna have a quick look. Oh, this is a case where I wanted to bring something up. You have a case of the inverted normals on your stones. So I wanted to bring that up really quick. Just making sure that people understand, right? Inverted normals are basically because one of your channels in your texture is not the right way, right? So your green channel basically influences how your green channel of your normal basically influences how your game engine is going to read that texture, right? There's two separate ways. There's OpenGL and there's DirectX. The difference there is, the only difference there is that the green channel of the normal is going to be flipped, right? So whenever you see that like, hey, my sun is coming from up here, but my highlight is coming from up here, that means that the information is being wrongly interpreted by the normal map that you've added, right? So quick fix there is just inverting the green channel on your normal map, which I think you can even do in Unreal, but I've never done it that way. Yeah. Quick fix, but I thought I'd bring it up anyway. So flip the green channel, and then you should be good to go. But yeah, if you ever struggle with that again, because I'm not really sure if it's happening on another texture, I can't really see it with this one. But if you exported a texture with, let's say, Substance Painter, then I'm assuming that it's going to happen more, right? Or with Substance Designer. So make sure that your export settings are for the correct engine, right? So in this case, Unreal, which is DirectX. That's what you're going to be looking for. This is probably not going to be stated in your export settings, but Unreal Engine is. So make sure you're exporting with the correct file format. And that's going to fix it. That's the one thing that I wanted to bring up, Pyro. Great progress on this. I like what you did with this back angle as well. You just need to make sure that like the dimensions make sense, right? In terms of like, hey, if I'm going to be walking up here, like this pillar is like kind of in the way. And then also, why am I getting up here? Simple fix would be just to add a door or something like that, right? Or maybe add like a couple of chairs or something. Basically given like an indication that the reason why you would go up here is because there is a door or something, right? But I like the way that this is structured in general, though. I kind of like that you have like a little bit of verticality going on. So that's why I would suggest to just add a door, and that fixes it. Cool. Thanks, Pyro. Let's see. Who is next? And a couple of quick ones. I think Sunny is going to be a quick one as well. So let's have a look. Sunny. Sunny, I think you're getting to the realization of basically every session that we did before where we're kind of scoping down and we're scoping down and we're scoping down. So I like what I see here. I think you're making the realization that like, oh shit, there's going to be a lot of work in this. So I kind of like what I see here. There's a whole bunch of text in here though. So let's have a look. Skip. I understand that it will help me quickly complete this project and then move on to another project to continue learning. So, okay, with that short statement, I'm already afraid that you're not going to finish this project. I don't want to like demotivate you or anything like that. But if you're already looking for a way out and we're even in the block out stage, you have a choice in front of you, right? Like either you keep going or you pick something really, really small that you can finish in like a decent amount of time, right? So I'm gonna just note that down. Like, got a choice, right? And that choice is, if you are already tired of the project, question mark, you have two choices. If that answer is yes, then scrap it and move to another project. If that answer is no, then yeah, keep it going. Keep it going, but like you need to settle down into like making this one for sure. Because what is the issue that I can see here is we've been talking about a block out for let me make sure. We have been talking about a block out since the 20th of February, once you first posted this, right? Well, 22nd of February, when we first talked about like the first iteration, right? So we really let that sink in, right? So we've been talking about this for 2 months already. No, 2 months? 1 month. Sorry. My calculations are completely off. We've been talking about this already for 1 month, and we're still in like very early blockout stages, right? I just want to make sure that you understand like where you are at right now. Let's see. Continue on reading. I reduced my workload significantly, and I also decided that my project would only have one main camera angle, as shown below. Yeah, that's what basically we've been saying before, right? Sticking with one camera angle, so that's a good choice. Also, do you see that the wall to the right of the gate is repetitive and boring? Do you have suggestions to improve the silhouette? To improve the silhouette? Oh, the silhouette of like the top? I mean, it depends on what it is, right? Like if it is like a... I'm still confused at this point. Because what is going on here is we're going in circles, right? Because you had like a really interesting like wall before, but now we're back to something completely different. So I'll give you like a short bit of feedback on this, right? But it is imperative that you just like either do something different if you want to keep changing this, or you just double down on what you have right now and try to make it the best version that you can, get it done, and then move to something else, right? Because what I don't want to happen is that we're just spinning wheels and that we're still talking about like the same project like in 6 months or something like that, right? I know that I'm being very blunt about it here, but I feel like this is the current course, the way that we're going about it. Um, so, on that note, I would say if you want to make the silhouette of the wall more interesting, look at all the previous iterations that you've done and pick a more interesting silhouette. Because you had some really interesting silhouettes there. But you ended up with something completely different. So I'm gonna say like revisit all walls, like just have a look at what you've done before, right? And like pick like the best iteration there. Do you see that the wall on the right is repetitive and boring? You had some pretty great solutions on that too, right? So let's see. Right, so this is like a previous iteration, which you had some really interesting ways of like breaking up the wall itself, right? With adding like more towers or more like additional things. I don't know what happened between this iteration and this one, where you completely scrapped it and didn't use like the good parts of this one, right? Because there are good parts about this. You just have to like be able to incorporate them into the current version, right? So I would really think about like what are some of the things that were good about this one and try to incorporate them back into this one, right? Because you have tools there that can help you. And then let's see. And then when it comes to the story of the project, I wanted to make it look abandoned, surrounded by trees and vines. Is that okay? No. I'm just gonna straight up say it. This is your first project, right? Take it easy, right? You have time to learn this. I would honestly say try to execute on what you already have in like the simplest way possible, right? Because even in this case, you're gonna learn a lot about tidyable textures, trim sheets, like all that kind of stuff, and what it needs to and what it takes to make something look good. If you then add like a completely different dimension on top of it, with adding like trees, which is like a huge pain to get trees looking really good, unless you were to use them from megascans, right? And they fit in the environment. But I kind of doubt it. And then vines, right, which are like really unique, and you have to like spend a lot of time like really figuring out like how they're going to affect the environment. It's too much, man. It really is. Try to just go for simple and execute it. That's what we're trying to do here, right? And you're realizing that yourself as well because you downscope significantly, right? So there is a realization that this is just like, it's getting a little bit out of hand. I need to downscope. Focus on that. And then the next time you want to do something, focus on foliage, right? And then once you've built up like all the skills to a degree where you're comfortable in executing on them, combine them to one thing, right? We do this step by step, not all at once, because that's never going to work. Okay. Last question. Oh no, two last questions. So this is my first time using a camera in Unreal. I want to keep the aspect ratio at 920 by 850. Is that adjustment okay? Yeah, so the aspect ratio is what you underlined here, right? So yeah, so this is the aspect ratio, right? I would honestly, in your case, like not even deviate to like a custom aspect ratio. I would just have it to like a preset, and then just place your camera in a different way, right? Where it kind of replicates what you had right now. Don't make it like hard on yourself, right? Just use the preset and then just place your camera in a way where it like works. And then finally, can you share a bit of the pros and cons as well as the differences when creating height maps, trim sheets, tidables with ZBrush and Substance Designer? Will ZBrush deliver higher quality? I've seen many AAA titles use ZBrush to do that. No, in short, no. There's no difference in the quality that a tool can put out, right? It's usually easier to do it in one program or the other. The difference between Substance Substance Designer and ZBrush in this case is that it is usually easier to execute on something in ZBrush because it's more familiar to us artists, whereas Substance Designer gives you like a whole bunch of flexibility. But like in the actual quality, there's no real difference, right? The quality comes from the person that's using it, not the tool itself. There's actually like really powerful stuff when you combine the two as well. Yeah. In short, there's no difference in quality, really, right? Hudson is saying, or just stop for a while, guessing this is burnout related. I have no idea. I think I'm making a big assumption here that this is like first big project. I'm really excited, but I don't know the consequences of my actions down the line, right? Which is fine. We've all been there, and I totally understand where that's coming from, right? But I don't know what the change was in the last week, because I feel like we had something good going with that gate, but now I'm seeing something completely different. And I don't know what to latch on anymore, right? So yeah. I'm keeping it pretty short for this one, Sunny. I feel like if you have any further questions, feel free to DM me, right? If you're maybe struggling with like a really big thing, let me know. Let me see if I can help in another way, right? Because I'm missing a lot of context between changes here. All right, thank you so much, Sunny. We're gonna move on to the next one. Next one is Dennis. Where are you, Dennis? Dennis is making or continuing material practice. I don't have any particular questions yet. However, I would appreciate any tips. Okay, so no specific questions. So I'm just going to keep it like relatively short on that, right? The main thing that I want to bring up is that overall it looks pretty decent. I don't think that there's usually like a lot of height variation between like marble, right? Especially in the grout of the marble. Because usually this is like for fancy homes, right? So you don't have like a lot of indentation, and they kind of want to keep like the surface levels as smooth as possible, right? That doesn't mean that you can't have like any indications. It's just that the current indications or like indentations are just like a little bit too much, right? And then also these kind of cuts, I don't really feel like they're working right now, right? I would honestly, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to show the layering, right? Which is interesting. But this is not normal tile work, right? I think marble is just done in like a completely different way, so I don't even know if it would be applicable. Let's just have like a quick look. So I'm gonna go here. Yeah, this is all like ceramic and all that stuff, right? And ceramic has like a pretty shallow tile like above it, right? So that's why I'm wondering that maybe you could do something where like you have like cracked marble, right? Which would look pretty cool. Let me see. You could have like a cracked marble with like these little kind of pieces attached to it. Textures. Yeah, that's cool where they polish it up again. Yeah. What is that? So yeah, you can see that it's not really directly apparent. Like you would just have like lots of cracks, right? But you don't really have like, oh, it cracked and then like a piece of the tile came off. Because marble is solid chunk, right? Like you're gonna get like really thick chunks of marble, like on your floor, I'm thinking. I'm also just exploring like marble floors like for the first time in my life, right? So that's my assumption at least. Yeah. So I don't think you're gonna see like the stereotypical like cracked tile, right? And then the tile itself is like split off. I don't think you're gonna see that. Oh yeah, I have the wrong refs. I found the ceramic tile cracks instead of marble. Yeah, okay. So yeah. But those cracks, if you get them, right? Like, those are gonna look really nice. The difficulty is, especially with the black ones, right? You kind of need to make them visible enough so that they really appear on like the black tiles. But yeah, you'll find a way. Yeah, that's the one thing that I will say. Like the marble itself, like I would keep it like pretty even, right? Where like all the indentations and like the separations are like way more subtle than they are now. Then if you have some cracking going on, well, if you have like some destruction going on, it would be like cracking instead of like the separation of tiles, right? Cracks also look too uniform, Hudson is saying that, and use a directional warp with a solid grayscale per tile. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with that. Yeah, that comes also with the territory of just looking at like more cracks, right? Like I think difficulty is man, if you can nail a crack like this, you know, if you can get this sort of look where it like chips open in bigger parts, but there's still like chunks of the thing left. Very tricky to do, especially in a way where you still have like separation between the actual tiles, right? But that would be sick if you can get something like that. Might actually just add this to the image, right? Cool. Yeah. But I love what you're doing, Dennis. Very focused on materials, right? I love that you're going down that route and then really leveling up your material game. And then I'm super excited to see that all come into play for the next environment. It's gonna be good, man. Yeah. Thanks for posting your work. And feel free to tag me for next week. How would you do that in Designer, Tim? I don't know how. Me neither. I would know how to start, roughly, right? But like, honestly, a lot of the things in Designer that I know by exploring, right? So it's not that I can tell you like, oh, you need to use this node and then this node and then this node, like in combination. I'll spend a lot of time just like playing around with stuff. And then hopefully I'll discover something, right? So like you were saying, using a directional warp and then like a slow blur and like all that kind of stuff, I'll probably like dive into, it's been a while. What are they called again? Like because I'm looking for like a separation between tiles, right? So if you want to have a difference between tiles, I'm already thinking flood fill. That's the word that I was looking for, right? Like a flood fill somehow. But already with a fluff fill, I'm worried that the detail that I'm trying to replicate is going to be too small for it to actually work with a flood fill. So, yeah. We'll have to see. Well, I mean, Dennis has to see. That'll be tricky. Yeah, and it's like, I gave you like a reference, right? But if you just get the cracking, right? I think that's already going to be a huge win. And if you can then like add those additional details on top of that base layer that you have, that's like again the cherry on top, right? But I'm not expecting you to nail that from the first try, right? Just get as close as you can, use a lot of references, right? And then see how far you get. Okay, next up, Liz. It's finally yours. I've been working on this and I would like some feedback about the texture I made for the floor and the ceiling as well. Okay. 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 So we got the wood on the floor. The wood actually looks quite nice, right? The wood actually looks quite nice. It kind of works really well in the screenshot itself. One thing that immediately stands out to me is this sort of continuity, right, between the splits. That's something you just have to break up, like, as much as you can. So try to like randomize where the splits are gonna be, right? Just zoom out and make some notes here. So randomizing the wood splits, right, would be the first thing that I would look into, because that immediately makes it feel like way more organic, right? If you have those dynamic splits going on and like there's like variation in them, already gonna help. That's where I would start. Play around with how thick like the opening is between the planks, right? Because I feel like it's a bit too thick right now, or like a bit too set apart. And usually what works really well is like try to get them a little bit closer together, right? So that the gap is not as big. And then add like a little bit of scale. Like I'm literally talking about like a 0.01 or something like that. Like a very small like randomization on the scale of them, so that you get like variation in the splits as well. What I feel works really well with Substance Painter, Substance Designer, is that you just need to add like very subtle layers, but you just need to add a lot of them, right? So for example, if I'm building like a tile generator, I will add like a rotation to every tile, right? Like a random rotation to every tile, but I'll just set it to such a low value that it's barely noticeable, right? I'm literally talking about, again, like 0.001 or something like that, right? That you can slightly see it, but if you're not paying attention, they would all look straight. But it's that detail that's really going to make a difference, right? So small random values. They really win. Yeah, but this is a good start for wood though. Wood is particularly tricky to make, I feel. Go marmots. I love that. Many do way too much. Yeah. Yeah, I think if you want to go for realism, right, it's just the layering of many subtle details that make it look real, rather than trying to overcompensate with like one layer, right? Same thing with Substance Painter, right? You kind of have to like really work in like layers and have more of them and like tweak every one like specifically, right? Like for example, the lightsaber that we were looking at today, the texturing looked really generic, right? We discussed that before. But the way that you actually solve that is by still having that pretty generic texture and then like building on top of it by cutting away from it, right? So you could have that generic texture, but once you start adding like, let's start with like a randomized mask, that takes away from it, right? So now we're getting a little bit of variation in the generator. Cool. Maybe do another one, right? Maybe play around with the values a little bit, maybe another one, and then go in like last bit and like really paint out like certain areas to get like even more randomness, right? And by doing all these additional layers, you build up something that looks random and chaotic like it would look like in real life. Cool. Liz, we're gonna talk about the roof next, right? Or like the ceiling, sorry. One thing to keep in mind with wood is that it's very particular in the way that we're gonna be constructing things, right? What I mean by that is that wood has like a specific directionality to it based on the grain, right? So for example, I'll give you a really quick example here, is that if you have this pole here, we have like this trace section, the grain is going up, which makes sense, right? That's the way that the grain is going to go, because we usually cut with the grain. But that means that the grain on this section doesn't line up, right? Because we're cutting against the grain. So what I would expect here is that I would love to see like the grain going that way, right? Now, we get to the really tricky part because we have like all this stuff. And that's where you kind of need to look into like references, right? Usually they would cut them out of like one piece, and you kind of can have like where it's like kind of following like the biggest direction, right? So you could have like the directionality going something like this. Or you could have it like really complex and it's built up out of like multiple shapes. Right. So wood grain is actually something to really take into account when you're making any wooden surface. Because that's what makes something made out of wood look like real, right? If we have a look at an example. If we go for a wooden cabinet. And if we go for not too noisy. Let's see. They're good. It's a good cabinet. It's just a good cabinet. Let's have a look at this. You know what? I'm just gonna try it here. Right, so we can kind of see on this cabinet that like the way that it's manufactured, it has to do a lot with like how the grain is actually done in like wood, right? So like the main parts of the cabinet are all going up, right? So that's the directionality of the wooden grain. But then this part that goes in between the two has a different directionality, right? Same thing here on the drawers and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, wood grain directionality is really important to really sell if something is built out of wood. Right? So you can apply that too to your roof here as well, right? So this beam, that would probably go this way, and then the main roof structure would probably go this way. Right? Which adds like visual interest to the whole thing as well. Because now, kind of hard to tell. I think the wood grain is just like wrapping around the whole thing, right? But that's not the way that should work. One thing to also think about is the way that this stuff looks. Right? Like right now, I'm not really getting like any indication of how is this built. Right? And if we go back to your reference. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Look at that. So you got a beautiful example here. Right? We got this like paneled wood that is like nicely layered, right? And you can really make something beautiful with this. So, oh, maybe you didn't do this because you did ask me to talk about the ceiling, right? But yeah, here we are. Anyway, so when it comes again to the directionality of things, right? Think about the way that this is built up, right? We kind of see like a little seam here. So we see that like this is going up, this is going left to right. With these guys, they usually do like a split on the sides here, right? So these would go to the sides, these would go up. And then this one will probably go also side to side. So the way that we replicate like a shape like this is if, in your case, you're using a tileable texture, right? So we kind of have to fake like all this stuff, like all the transitions with geometry, right? So we would actually split this up into actual physical elements within our mesh and then just map them differently based on the directionality of your wooden grain, right? And that's the way that we're gonna approach like this whole section at the top, rather than making like a single section that is just mapped like with the same kind of wood, right? So yeah. And that's why I bring up this question, right? Because if you understand how this is built, you're gonna realize that, hey, this sort of paneling, right? That probably has to go with the grain like this, whereas this one has to go to grain like this. That's why I asked that question, right? And just look at like, there's probably like a tons of videos out there of woodworking, right? No, it's all good, Hudson. It's all good. I'm gonna talk about some of the things that you brought up as well. Just a second. But yeah, that's really crucial to understand here, right? Like understanding how something is built and then how we can replicate that into like a 3D space. So have a look at the concept again and like look for references, right? And like that really help you understand how something is. And that's going to give you like a lot of input for how you can do the ceiling better, right? Because what I'm seeing here right now, I'm probably thinking like, hey, what if we can use like this texture, but also for like the main part of the ceiling, but then keep the beams in like the wood that they already have, right? Because the beam is a solid piece of wood, right? So you don't want to make it out of planks, obviously, because then they're going to separate. But you can still have like a planked floor like on top of it, depending where the seams are going to be, right? So yeah, I hope that helped. And it's just really thinking about like how things are going to be constructed that we can really understand how we can then replicate them inside of 3D, right? So asking the question, how is something built? And then investigating that. And that's how we get to better understanding. Oh my god, investage? Investigate. That's how we can really get like an understanding of how we should proceed with something, right? And this is not cheating. Like, this is not something that you should be ashamed of. Like, I have a lot of experience, right? I still look at references and I look up stuff like every day as I'm building things. Like every single day. Like, this is something that is just like the reality of even working in a professional environment, right? Still looking up a bunch of stuff. Discussing what I looked up with other people as well. This is a very normal part of being a professional when it comes to this. Because you're trying to create a better understanding of things, right? Yeah, I think that was enough feedback, right? I think that's already going to help you a lot, because the stuff that we talked about today is going to be applicable to like any surface that you're going to do from here on out. Let's see. For the panels, use a curve node. Yeah, you could do. Whatever you're more comfortable with. I would not use curve nodes myself, but yeah, it depends on what you love using, right? Are the bricks like a fake brick wall? It seems flat. I think, but this texture can definitely be improved, right? I think it's also because the grout is so big that it kind of looks like really off at the moment. But yeah, like some references can definitely help there as well. I don't know what it was looking like in the... Yeah, like even in like the reference that you use, right? Like the grout is like much slimmer, and like there's much more variation in like the style of the bricks. Yeah. Hope that helped, Liz. Thank you so much for showing it though. I know that sometimes this might be a little bit uncomfortable, right? But I really do appreciate that you share this with us, also because it helps you out so much, right? And I'm honestly looking forward to how you're going to progress with this scene, because I can already tell you're going to learn a lot. So best of luck. If there's anything else that I can help with, just let me know. You can do it either through like WIP Wednesday or just send me a DM as well, right? Cool. Who's next? 4 more to go. We have Amma next. Amma is next. What can I help you with, Amma? It's a smaller environment project where I want to recreate the house of Mr. Orange. Mr. Orange? Sounds awesome. Love the cute orange on top of it. Oh, the bricks are from Megascans? What? They look horrible. Can't believe those are from Megascans. That's like a shitty brick texture. Interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, to be fair, there's some weird stuff out in the world, and yeah, that's probably one of them. You want to make it in your own style, and I would take it rather loosely to the original since it's very stylized, and I want to make it more in a realistic style. Okay, cool. Did it sketch, and I changed some things a bit. I'm mostly concerned about the composition and proportions right now. Okay. I have no idea. Oh, okay. Okay, that's the original. Okay. Yeah, I don't think they have parameters on Megascans. I think it's just scans, right? I don't think they do like any procedural adjustments to them. I think so. Not too sure though. But this is cool. I like it. I kind of like that you did a sketch for it as well. It's awesome. Posted an updated block out? Oh, don't I have the updated one? Oh, sorry. Did you post that? Oh, I was so confused. Let's get this in here. Bonk. It's done. Okay. I like it though. I like the concept of it. I really do. I think the proportions, like the main thing that I'm missing with proportions, right, is just like I don't really have like anything to compare it with. Right? I'm not too familiar with like the size of like some of the objects that we can see in the scene, right? Because I'm not from the region. Well, apart from the door, right? I guess that's given us like a decent scale reference. But honestly, like what I would suggest is just get scale references in there, right? The way that I do it is because you're doing this in Unreal, like just look for mannequin or something like that in like the engine folder. You have to like make that visible, but like once you have the engine folder, you can just look for the mannequin that's just posed as like a T. And you can just like throw that guy around like in your scene. You just have like an easy scale ref. that will help you like figure out your proportions. But like honestly, from what I'm looking at, it looks good, right? Maybe like this is the thing, right? Like the first go-to is like maybe the roofs are taller, right? And they kind of have like a bigger overhang, whereas yours, let's see, in certain areas kind of feels like really slim, right? I would expect like a really chunky roof to be on top of it, right? That's what I would expect. But you can add a bit of chunk to that roof if you wanted to. That's the first thing that I can see, right? Because like these roofs are like really thick, right? Because it's just like layers and layers of straw. So you can definitely make it like way thicker, and then maybe, oh, you know what would be cool? Talking about the roof anyway. Right, you could maybe make it like a little bit taller as well. Let's see. How do we do this? So maybe make it like a little bit taller as well. Because what they usually have is like, yeah, they have like this little triangle up top. Right? And that was like used for like ventilation at a certain point, but like they probably closed that off. So you could have like a triangle on top here. Right? And then you just make this giant like orange, you just make that like sag the entire roof. Right? Because it's like sinking under the weight of like that giant orange just being on the rooftop. It'd be really interesting to really play around with the silhouette, right? And especially this heavy object being on the rooftop. Because you can really play up that element, right? Yeah, I would think about like making like the silhouette especially like a little bit more impactful, right? So yeah, just making them yeah, focusing on like the silhouette, like the main shapes, right? Like that exaggeration. Yeah, sometimes I think because it works so well with this heavy object being on there, right? You can really play around with that. So you could kind of blend like realistic with like exaggerated proportions and just make like the silhouette like really stand out, right? And still have like a realistic approach in texturing and shapes and all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, you wanna focus on the silhouette, right? Silhouette is king. You gotta make it stand out. Hey Daniel, I'm interested in the Easy Fog and the Ultra Dynamic Sky plugins for Unreal Engine 5. Any opinions on them? I'm using like a very outdated Unreal Engine Ultra Dynamic Sky. I've been using that since like 4. It was pretty basic at that point. So I don't really have an updated opinion on it. Yeah, but just really playing with like the thickness of the roof, right? That's going to make like a huge impact, and also like extending it outwards. That's going to help a lot as well. Again, just a silhouette, right? Where you have like this real nice like roof just like sticking over the edges. So it was like really nice to see. Let's see. Composition and proportions. I think the composition is okay. Right? I think what you would probably be like a little bit careful about is how you're gonna fill out the background, right? Like, what is the background gonna be? Because you can do like a bunch of stuff with the background, right? But I'm not sure what you're gonna fill out like the blue section with necessarily. So yeah. That would be like the main thing that I'm questioning, right? If it's going to be like a full forest, or if it's going to be like the original, right? Like where it's like a cliff and then you just have like like an open sky. Yeah. I mean, you can tweak like the composition over time as well, right? But I don't mind it currently. It's just like mainly the background that I'm wondering about. Let's see. Let's have a look at some other questions. I did a sketch, so I can change some. I think things a bit faster. Okay. We read that. The building itself will be modular, but I'm wondering which parts I can solve with trims. Everything? All the wood stuff, right? Like, I would honestly like have a look at all the wood can all be trimmed. So like all these little railings, like all the banisters, the fences, like basically everything that is wood is trim. Make it real easy, right? Well, maybe not all, maybe not everything that's wood, right? Because you could have the pillars as a trim. And then you could have like a tileable for like the bigger sections, right? So and then the paper walls or whatever they're called, like I would have them as tileable as well. And if you have like a decent set of just like wood trim, you can make everything in this environment, right? Like you can just have like the doors, the canopies, like everything that's wood. So yeah, pretty straightforward on this one, I would say. So wood is like mostly trim. And then you have like the wooden walls. That's a tileable tile, and then paper wall is tileable as well, right? And then to add like additional texture detail, what I would do is just play around with like decals and vertex paint, right? Like keep it relatively simple. It's the way that I would approach it. There's a big cliff in the original scenery. Unsure if it adds anything to the composition. Yeah, that's where I'm not sure, right? I feel like you can do some stuff with like the background if you make like, if you keep the really big cliff, right? And then you have like a couple of massive cliffs like in the background. That could be interesting, right? If you really play up the idea that it's not just like a single cliff, but you have just like massive rock formations in the background or something. There could be something to that. And it also allows you to layer a bunch of stuff and it looks like really fantastical and whimsical, right? As in like unique, right? Not as in stylized. Yeah, if you just have like these large columns in the back, you give yourself like a lot of flexibility. You can really play around with them, right? And maybe you put like one in the foreground here as well, leaning against this rock. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. It just depends on how you use it, right? If you're only doing like one cliff wall, I feel like it's maybe like a little bit of a waste just to have like one cliff and then nothing on the other side. I don't know. Probably better ways of like approaching that then. Maybe just having like yeah, something else instead. It's a fun idea. I'll play around with that. Yeah, sounds good. Have fun with it. And then the last thing, any other general feedback and input? Appreciate it. Yeah, as you probably know, I think I kind of want to stay away from like the general feedback, unless if there's something that really stuck out to me, right? Which is probably like the silhouette and like the chunkiness of the roof. So I think that's gonna be it for this session, Amma. This looks like a fun project though. Like just playing around with like taking something that is like by its nature like so stylized and turning it into like something realistic. I feel like that works really well the opposite way around as well, where you can turn something realistic into something like super stylized too, because you already start out with like a solid base, right? But then you just need to twist it into something that it's not. It's really interesting. The material instance of most Megascan services have a lot of options to tweak. Oh, okay. It's completely wrong on that one. My poor wallet will be waiting for a sale. Last question, Tim. I've been learning Substance Designer for about 6 months now. How should I assess if I'm ready to start learning Unreal? That is for an environment art perspective. I mean, just start learning now? I'm not sure what you're waiting for, right? Unless you have nothing to do in Unreal, right? If let's say the only focus that you had up until this point is materials and you haven't really done like anything else, then I wouldn't necessarily say that it's worthwhile to jump into Unreal yet. Yeah, if you want to make like a diorama or make something bigger, right? Jump into Unreal. Thank you for the feedback. Really excited to keep it going. Hell yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Amma. Down to the final 3. So we got Alex first. Alex is participating in his first ever WIP Wednesday. Any feedback you can give me at this stage is most than welcome. Okay, so we'll stick to like the things that like immediately jump out to me, right? For the most part, I really like what I'm seeing, right? I like the variation of things. There's a couple of things that I'll point out. So, the transition of the vertex paint. It feels very soft, right? And not really natural to like what you would probably see in an environment like this, where you probably have like a more interesting transition, right? Like scuffed paint or something like that. It just needs like a little bit of more, like a little interesting, more interesting texture. And then also what I picked up from the concept as well. I don't know if I had the concept here. Yeah, some really good transitions on the edges there. Just to help kill like this really unique feeling. Like, or like really generic feeling, sorry. Tidal ball that's on the ground, right? Because you really need to break up those tidal ball edges as well. You can do that through vertex paint, right? Because you've already set that up for the buildings. You can do that through decals. Yeah. Okay, thanks, man. Nice stream. This is the only YouTube channel that focuses on 3D environment art. Yeah, I feel like there's not that many around. Thanks for popping in, Hudson. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I think those two are like the ones that immediately like jump out to me. Right? But since you're new here, Alex, feel free to ask me any questions for the next session, right? I usually try to stay away from like giving general feedback. Because that can go in so many different directions, and I don't know if that's going to be relevant to you, right? So feel free to ask questions for the next time. Yeah. I'm looking forward to see this develop though. Like, I feel like you already have like a good base from Thiago Klafke, right? He does amazing work with his course. I love seeing like what people do with it. But yeah, feel free to ask me questions for the next time. And keep it up, buddy. Last two, I'm gonna go to David first. I love what I'm seeing here already, David. This is looking awesome. I think composition-wise, I'm already to a point of being satisfied, unless there's small little things. Not really, right? Like you got like a really solid composition. You worked with like a really solid starting point as well. The main thing that I would want to say is that I feel I feel like what is the difference between the concept and your piece is that yours feels like more constricted around the tunnel itself. But like in the original, we're getting just like a little bit more space around the tunnel, right? And that's like the main thing. That is like the biggest difference to me. It feels like the tunnel is kind of being choked at the moment. But I would also say that it's like a bit too late to play around with that now, right? Unless you got some PCGs magic going on and you can easily move it. Honestly, I wouldn't bother because it's pretty late for that stuff, right? What I will say is think about your aspect ratio. What always looks really good is making it like really cinematic, right? Like having like a widescreen. I think you're already there. I'm a really big fan of like going like ultra wide, right? And then having the black bars to really make it cinematic. And then you can use those black bars to say something about the art, right? Like maybe having the title or something there and like your contact email. I feel that always like pushes it to the next level. But that's always like a personal opinion. Hey, Alex, thank you for the feedback. No worries, I didn't know you were in here, man. But yeah, feel free to ask like questions for the next time. We'd love to help out with specific stuff. So, white screen, and then like black bars, right? It just tricks our brain into thinking it's cinematic. Think. So that's something that I would definitely look into. And then let's see. It's an older post. Lighting and shadows. I think now it's mostly to a point of presentation, post process, colors, etc. Yeah. I would definitely try and play around in Photoshop, right? To see what you can do as like the final thing, right? Like take it into post and see if you can really dial like the colors in, right? I'm honestly like pretty shit in like giving like really specific color grading tips. Because what I do is just like really playing around with like the values myself until I find something that like really ticks, right? Like sometimes I have these moments where I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm on a good track here. Let's keep this going, right? But yeah, take it into post. And how to get the best looks and screenshots videos to post on my portfolio. Already planning a sequencer for a small 20-second video. That's good. That's a good amount of time as well, 20 seconds. And a small scene to show out the unique vegetation and rocks I made myself. There's also some text shader stuff with decals I'm going to showcase in a small video. That's good. The more visually interesting you can make it, right? With videos, GIFs, anything like that, anything moving, the better it is, right? So you're already on like a really good track there. Yeah, together with like the aspect ratio and cinematic feel of things, that's gonna like enhance like the main shots of the scene, right? I think it comes down to the breakdowns, right? Breakdowns usually take like the most amount of time to really polish and to really make them look good, because it comes down to like the smallest things, right? It comes down to like the fonts that you use, like what size they are, like how what color they have, like how in your face are they, right? So really take your time with all that stuff. Give it like at least a couple of days, right? Like play around with it, take a break, go for a walk, like look at it again. Really take your time with that stuff. Yeah, think about font size, the color, and especially how you're going to be presenting your breakdown, right? Because you said that you wanted to do like your foliage, right? You wanted to present like the foliage and the rocks that you made yourself, which is awesome, but you just have to make sure that you present them in like a pleasing way. Because what usually happens is that people, they kind of rush the presentation of things, especially the breakdowns, right? And then they're like, oh, I'll just open like a new level, I'll kind of put like a quick light in it, and then these are my assets, right? I'm not a big fan of that. I would always love to see it in like a simplified context. So what that means is you basically duplicate the level, you clear out like a section, give it like nice light, right? And then you present like your assets on that. So you still have like a ground or like terrain texture or something that you could work with. You know where I have really good examples of artists that do really good breakdowns? One that I keep bringing up recently is, I mean, it's not recent, but is Matthew Wilshaw. Let's have a look here. It is, I will say, like the choice of, let me show it here, right? Oh. So we have this one here, for example, right? This one is kind of different because it's a single prompt, but the way that like the information is conveyed is very effective, right? And I'm not looking at like multiple images. I can see the context and the technical items that I need, right? It has like everything that I want to have. When it comes to breakdowns for foliage, let's see, his name again. Atia. So this is the first thing that I can think of in terms of foliage, right? This is kind of anti what I was saying, but like if you can present this well, and again with context, like this works really well, right? Like very clean, with a neutral setting, and it just like it is really well presented, right? It just looks really good. Let's see some other examples here. I probably prefer this one more because there's like a bit more going on, right, with the background and stuff. Yeah. I'll share the work in here as well. Yeah, those are like two examples that I can quickly come up with that are like really good. There's probably like, if you start looking around, it's probably you're gonna be finding like a lot of them. Yeah, overall I like the plan, right? Like you have like a small video, 20 seconds, you have like your main shots. Yeah, they look so good. I know, like he knows what he's doing with those. But yeah, like I like your plan for it, man. Like your plan for the presentation. It just comes down to like really tweaking the specific things, right? Like really thinking about the font that you're going to be using. Really thinking about like the size and the color of it as well. I know this sounds so ridiculous, but that's also like if we look at the one that we were looking at here, right? Like the work from Matthew, that's the first thing that I would change. Like the font here, like the spacing here, like it's not aligned to the side, and you have like more space here than there is here, right? These are like minor things, right? But I feel like if you want to take that to the next level, that's the sort of stuff that you need to start paying attention to. And it's still effective, right? The reason why I bring this up is because like it's a very achievable like way of presenting your stuff that has like all the core information that you need, and it's presented effectively, right? That's why I bring this up constantly. Yes. Okay. I hope that helped, David. I hope that helped. I love the environment itself, right? I think you picked like a really good concept as well. I'm in love with the concept. It's kind of a shame that we don't have like characters, right? Because that would bring it to like the next level. But the characters in this would also be like pretty unique. right? They kind of have like a certain vibe going on, right? It's not that you can just like pop in like a couple of characters and have it work. You need like very specific ones. So I'll mostly work on it for the next 2 or 3 days, and then I can probably post it on Monday. Yeah, that sounds good. Looking forward to seeing it, man. Okay, last but not least, Will. Let's have a look. I wanted to know if there was any extra details as a whole that would help guide the scene in the direction that I was going for. The scene is supposed to show an upper class carriage on a train in a post-apocalyptic world, such as the one from Snowpiercer. I know this is fairly vague, but I'm finding most of the scene is complete. So I was hoping you could use the newest picture I sent. Yeah, I did. I think this picture. Yeah, so this picture is the newest one. This picture is the older one. I do have to say, I think I like the older one more. It has more contrast. We're getting like a little bit more bloom and all that kind of stuff, right? It feels like much more vibrant. And this one feels muted in contrast. So that's why I have them both up here, right? Yeah, I honestly think that in terms of like the vibes, right, that you're gonna go for, I think it's pretty on point, right? It looks like really fancy, like dinner recital, like kind of thing, right? Where, I mean, it's not every day that you see like a guy in the middle like playing a piano, right? So I think in terms of vibes, it's pretty on point. Yeah. There are like some small things, right? Maybe you can see it better in this one. Oh, shit. I think I cut this one off. If I went with the top one with more contrast, would it work? So, you mean the bottom one? Right? I mean, that's sort of what it is, right? I mean, you don't necessarily want to just have more contrast. Let's see. Because just contrast is not going to make it look good, right? Let's see. Yeah. I mean, it kind of comes close, right? Like the main difference that I see is that like the lamps are like really saturated, right? Which in this one, like the lights feel like way more neutral or like natural than they do in this one. Like they feel like overly saturated in this one. But otherwise, yeah, this can work. But they kind of feel the same to me, right? I like what you did with the carpet, like all the ribs in them. Looks really good. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about details here, right? Like, if you feel like the one up top like works better, go for it. Like, this is just like the thing that I quite like, that we have like a little bit more like neutral, natural light here. But in terms of contrast, yeah, they're like pretty comparable. Also do the adjustments here. I see. Is that everything? It's fairly vague. Yeah. No, I think honestly this is in a very good state, right? There's nothing really that really stands out to me. Oh, apart from this. I'm gonna be so annoying, right? Like, maybe 2 things. Oh, dirty? I thought we were supposed to be fancy, right? So like the pipe is really dirty. I would probably expect that to be like cleaner. And then also like, how is this pipe connected? Like normally you have like a little bit of a transition here, but it just goes straight into like the ceiling. That's like honestly like the main thing that stood out to me. And the rest of it was pretty good, right? There's nothing immediately that jumps out to me. What would you pay for a ticket on this train? Oh, this is not a train that I want to board. Like this looks like a death trap to me. It depends, right? You don't have a choice. Like if it's really Snowpiercer stuff, then yeah. I guess I'll make it to that train. That was roughness. Oh yeah, yeah. I know. But it's like, it's just, it feels like really, really over the top. I just thought about another thing. Just a small little thing, right? We want the center to stand out. What if we make the cushion red? Train murder mystery. I think making the cushion red because everything else is like so brownish, right? I think that could make like this area stand out a little bit more. Just as like a slight detail, right? Yeah. That's the main thing. Main things that I'm gonna leave you with, Will. But yeah, sometimes little touches like that can make like a difference, right? You wouldn't ride my train? Well, it's not your train. I didn't know that you were fancy and rich. Since when do you own a train, Will? You've been keeping this from me. How dare you? Train murder mystery? Yeah, and then like CS coming in and immediately it's about murder, right? Like, oh, no one said that. Get out of here with your murderous intentions. Or maybe add a red cloth that you can get with the piano. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Something that's like draped on top of it or something, right? For sure. Something that makes it stand out, right? Alright. I think that's gonna be it, Will. You're close to the finish line. It's looking really nice, man. I love the iterations that you've done on this. Yeah. And I feel like we're nearly there, man. So keep it up, finishing touches, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. I like the little drape that you have here. Didn't notice that. Cool. Cool stuff, man. Thank you for showing your work. And yeah, if there's more questions, you know where to find me. Right? We kind of spend like a lot of time talking about this anyway. So yeah. Best of luck, buddy. Alright. With that said, oh, I just closed Affinity just all of a sudden. With that said, I'm gonna leave you all here. It's been way over time. Like we've ran like an hour past, which is freaking nuts. I want to thank you all for being here though. I really appreciate it. I know it was a long session. I would advise everyone like to go out and check like the new user accounts that we've added to the website. There's like a whole bunch of goodies waiting for you there. Yeah. And if you want to be a part of this in the future, like we do this on a weekly basis. So I'll be back next week. And yeah, hopefully seeing a bunch of you in the next one. Bye-bye, people. Ah, where's the button? I've hit all the buttons.